I'd like to call the Port Commission meeting for August 18th for the Port of Bellingham to order. Our first item is roll call. Let the record show all three commissioners are present. The next item is public comment. There's no one signed up. Is there anyone that wanted to speak that didn't sign up? Okay, seeing none. Well, I guess that's a good sign when we haven't been here for a month and there's no one that has any public comment about the Port of Bellingham. The next item is our consent agenda. Lindsay's filling in for Diane today. And Lindsay, if you could please go over the consent agenda.
A motion to approve consent agenda items A through H.
We have the consent agenda on the screen, and gentlemen, you've read yours. Any comments?
Right, I've got just a question. So on item B on the transfer of ownership of the surplus computer, why would that go straight to recycling and not through a sort of our regular auction process?
We've been trying that without any people having any interest in our surplus equipment. So historically, the school districts have taken them out in the county, and the school districts said we don't want them anymore. We get new equipment, and we've tried to sell them, and that doesn't work either. So I think we're just electronic recycling is the next thing we can do.
Sounds good. Thank you.
Thank you, Mike. Any other questions? Nothing. Seeing none, or hearing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Aye. Passes 3-0. Our next item is a presentation from the, or an update from the Sailing Center.
I'm Mike Alsop, and I've been working on this project for, I guess, a year now. But I would like to thank you for the time, and certainly the time that Rob has put in on this project, as well as other port employees and whatnot. But I asked myself, why do I want to get involved in this? And because I'm old and tired. And I guess my goal is to have the youth in Bellingham addicted to the water instead of sitting up on Railroad Avenue addicted to something else. And I really think the water access issue is very, very important to this community, both the county, the city, and the other, and internationally. Jim will speak in a minute about the things that the actual detail of the program. I personally think that the water access and for the community is important because we need to find the next Archie Talbot and Jim and Stowe and build the next cold storage and build a minesweeper, or try to build a minesweeper a week with Howard Mills doing the wiring and Haskell Corporation doing the manufacturing of all the mechanical applications. We need another Glenovich family that can invent a drum seiner and improve the skills of the community. We need a Coolgis who can build a seafood plant, and Martin Coolgis and Nick can build a seafood plant, and Blaine, and have a daughter that's the mayor. We need an Art Nordvet, another Uniflight, a Randy Sabaya, Red and Ed, a Jay Bornstein and a family, a fisherman. These are people that got their start with a water-based idea, and you just can't give it to them. They have to grow up, appreciate, and know the water. A small example of that is we've had this junior sailing program, and it's been a very successful program. We would like to grow it 5 times or more. And in that program, we had a girl that started at 8 years old, and she sailed. And she grew up through the program and then decided that she's a member of the yacht club, and her family was, and decided that she would be a first mate on the Zodiac. She worked on the Zodiac a couple of years, and then she got her master's license at the Bellingham Yacht Club. She's currently a first mate on a Crowley tug and will soon be a captain. She's only 23. So I think she would have never had any idea that this was possible without access to the water. So we're here today to present and make a presentation to you folks for gaining that access, which I think will be a really big public benefit. So if Jim would come up here and provide a little detail for you, I'll get off my soapbox.
Thank you, Mike.
Don't give them early, we'll get distracted.
Jim, for the folks on YouTube, introduce yourself, if you will, please.
Sure, thank you. I'm Jim Gibson, and I'm a Board of Trustee member of the Bellingham Yacht Club and have a background in education and administration. And I'm excited, really excited about this program because of the opportunity for our youth in the community. And we've been working on this project since September, researching best practices of sailing centers, looking at programs from around the United States, what kind of boathouse, what kind of storage area, what kind of property would be best in our community for this to happen. So the first handout that I gave you is an overview of the many documents that we put together that represent really what the research says in terms of where we should be headed in the future to supply that kind of resource for kids. And right now, the need is that there are limited options for storage, for launching, especially launching, and for a center where all the youth and eventually families and adult community could go for sailing. So we have a committee of 5 people. Nick Kaiser is one of them, who actually started sailing in the location that we're recommending, which is on the corner of Cornwall and Pine Street. And when he was 8 years old, he found this ideal setting, and I don't know how many years ago that was, a number of years. But going back even farther, the Bellingham Yacht Club had their original clubhouse at that location in 1925. And for a wide variety of reasons that are outlined in this first document that I gave you, we are looking at the beach area, which will be adjacent to Cornwall Beach. I'm not sure if that's the current title, because we've been talking to the city about what the name of this new beach complex will be, but I think most people know what I'm talking about, that area south of Cornwall. And we're talking about locating a facility, in this case, a real gold mine of a facility. It's the Zervis-designed structure that's on the parking lot at Community Food Co-op. And it's just an outstanding historic building that would serve our purposes. And so we have the full support of the Community Food Co-op to move the building to that location to jumpstart this project. And it's a beautiful Frank Lloyd Wright designed building. And hopefully you know where I'm talking about on the parking lot there. So We have until April 15th to move the building to a site that we select. And as Mike mentioned, the Port Bellingham staff has been tremendous. And thank you, Rob, and your staff for helping us look at all these different places. In fact, we have 6 different locations, and I think that's in your board background material, some of the background that I sent in terms of looking at various places that are tremendous resources. But what we did was to come up with 20, can you hear me okay? 20 criteria, and 3 of the most important were cost, visibility, and safety. So the first one, okay, now we're going to move to the second page, the second handout. And in this case, the site at Pine and Cornwall met every one of our 20 criteria, and it had the fewest number of cons or disadvantages compared to any of the other places. So it's like there's this confluence of opportunities that coming together. The building to move, the site selection that was based upon almost a year review of these different places, and a number of commitments and assistance from other people. In fact, the food co-op would donate the building to us, and we already have $36,000 with commitment to move the building if we decide to go ahead with this plan. So if you look at the third document, you can see it's a summary of all the reasons why this is a good move and why there's so many people interested in committing their time and energy and expertise to make this project work. Again, the safety of the kids is one of the ideal spots in the county, in the West Coast, really. So we're really excited about that. The economic benefits, again, having this opportunity to move the building down to get it underway and then eventually build a community center, which we're calling the International Sailing Center, because we'd like to invite people from up and down the coast. So the last page that I gave you represented a number of people that are not only friends of the project, and that these numbers are growing daily, but also a number of folks that have real commitment and desire to help move ahead. So every day we're getting more and more signatures and more support. And with that, I'd like to see if any of our other people from the audience that have been working with us would like to say anything.
Please feel free.
Craig or Scott or
Todd, could you go to the mic, because if you don't, we can't hear it on the video. Thank you.
doesn't raise up, so you have to be on.
Hi, I'm Todd Schuster. I'm the representative from the Working Waterfront Coalition. I wasn't expecting to speak today, but jumping in. I'm also the owner and operator of Gato Verde Adventure Sailing. I started out in youth programs just like this, and then I went on to run programs like this. And when I moved to Bellingham, I was horrified that there wasn't access for kids. And the Community Boating Center is a good start, but the International Sailing Center, I think, could really create an unbelievable opportunity here. I've run programs in Berkeley and Chicago and Minnesota, and the combination of safety and location is just exceptional for that particular spot, and it's a resource I think that it's just crazy that Bellingham hasn't had up to this point in terms of bringing in people from all walks of life instead of kind of just from the yacht clubby kind of scene. And with the planned extension of the walk walkway, I think the visibility would be spectacular and would, again, generate more and more interest for this. And I just can't say enough about the safety aspect of this particular location. It is exceptional, with beginners being able to start out in the sheltered areas and more advanced kids and adults being able to move further out depending on their skill set. So both from the working waterfront and from my own business, I think it's an exceptional operation potentially.
Thank you.
Hello, I'm Craig. My name is Craig Henderson, and like the previous guy, I wasn't ready to talk to you guys. But let me, one of your consent agenda items, item, let me see, E. It was part of an agreement with the Bellingham Sailing Foundation, which I am the president of the Bellingham Sailing Foundation. We formed a 501c so that we'd have a vehicle or a way to contribute to the youth sailing. With that, we built the dock at Zwanich Park with donated money. And the whole thing, it's just it's been just snowballing. It's been growing. And the enthusiasm is really good. But all we really need is to be able to put these boats in the water and pull them out. It's as simple as that. And then with Mike Alsop's enthusiasm, it's great because he just thinks out of the box. You know, instead of being a sailing center, it's an international sailing center. And all around Puget Sound, this is growing. I just recently had a conversation with Department Army Corps of Engineers, Randall Perry. With the docks that we put in, I had to get 6, 7 agencies permit to do it. So I spoke with Randall Perry about possibly expanding the ramp at our current location so we could use it in the interim till something else happened. And I commented on how the junior sailing stuff is just really growing around Puget Sound. He said, I really noticed that. And so we just want to eliminate the barriers to be able to put those boats in the water and pull them out. And with this project, with Mike Alsop's enthusiasm, and I'm really impressed how these wealthy guys are pulling out their checkbooks. It's really cool. And so we can do this with our own money and with your guys' help.
Here, Jim.
Sorry about that. We're on TV.
I know, that's why I'm so nervous.
My question is, would this be in any way related to Blaine? Would there be some offshoots of this?
You know, we don't discriminate by women, men, children, color. It doesn't matter. Anyone can come use it.
Well, I know they've had sailing lessons there.
Oh, that's really common around Puget Sound. There's the youth sailing lessons. Actually, I was talking to our governor about this, and I told him about our sailing center we wanted to do, and he pulls out his phone and he shows me a picture of his son and their little El Toro sailboat they just restored. So it's kind of an easy sell. You know, everyone kind of likes this. We're talking about the effects it has on people. Mike was talking about Troy Curran's daughter that's become the tugboat first mate. In addition, another person, Lily Grimshaw, she's finishing up her engineering at UW. It's very inspiring, and the girls do as well as the guys. So, thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Dominique Zervis with Zervis Law, and that Zervis building was designed by my dad, who studied with Frank Lloyd Wright, and it is an example of Frank Lloyd Wright's style, and it's really an icon in this community. But beyond that, you know, my family has no attachment to it. But I do have teenage sons, and one of the challenges as a parent of teenagers was to find a program that wasn't the formal sports. The county parks no longer has the program for teens that it had for summer activities for kids. And without the school, you know, football, baseball, that sort of thing, if the kids weren't interested in that, there really is nothing for teenagers in the community to be doing that's that's under adult supervision, that's also not on the corner of Railroad. So this would be a fantastic thing for the community in that sense. Also, for the city parks, as you know, as they've mentioned, that there's been a lot of focus on that area that's so far, just for general purposes, being called the Cornwall Park area, that's slated for eventual development. And by bringing up public vision and viewing and participation in this area, it will help bring focus to that and allow, I believe, help push that off more quickly, which we also need. Also, the city, we know, is under quite a bit of pressure from kayakers to have some more access to the water, and that requires the beach access, and this area would be able to provide that. And the boating area, the International Boating Center or Sailing Center is looking toward including access for kayaks as well. Another thing is on that list of the points that Jim mentioned, there's also the economic point. And Todd Ellsworth with, I think it's Recreation Northwest or something, he did a study for Whatcom County. The state of Washington did a study recently that looks at the economic impacts of recreational activities in the state of Washington. And he took those numbers for Whatcom County and did a whole program analysis of all those numbers for Whatcom County. And I don't know if some of you may be familiar with his presentation on that. So through that, we learn, we have the absolute numbers on how much additional recreation brings to our county in the way of economic benefits, from people coming to stay in hotels, eat in restaurants, buying shops. The additional boating would be focused on boat repair, boating equipment, safety equipment, that sort of thing, and just the purchase of those items. And I bring that up because these youth sailing programs, as you've probably been reading on the paper, whether it's on the cover, the front page of the paper, or on the front page of the sporting section, these kids are doing, they've only been doing it for a couple of years that they've had these racing programs in the schools, and they are doing amazingly well nationally, and I believe they did some work in Canada as well, but it's just exploding. The kids are so into it. So with that, bringing the families here for regattas, they'll only be using what we have to offer, which are great sailmakers, boat repairs, all those resources. We have a ton of hotels now that are not on Samish Way, and so we have a lot to offer to that, and that recreation is one of the key growth, economic growth items here, so we can contribute to that as well. So with that, I strongly encourage you to support the International Sailing Center. I think that everybody is doing an amazing job, putting in tons of hours and energy and effort, and doing all of this just for the love of kids and for the love of sailing, and in support of the economy and the boating industry in general, for whether it's working on tugboats or out there on a Wednesday or Thursday night racing, for whatever it is. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Is there anyone else with a comment on the International Sailing Center? Mike, I have to agree with everything you said. I grew up, as you did, for the first 20 years of my life in Lake Whatcom, the next 50 in Bellingham Bay racing sailboats and San Juan Islands. And, back in the 60s when we first started, I imagined it would be 5 times bigger than it was then. Unfortunately, it isn't. And it's going to take a program like this to really get it going. And I think it's really important. So I'm 100% behind it. Like I say, I agree with everything that you said there, including the old part. The part that I question is if that's the right location. I think it's the right location for you, but is it the right location for the Port of Bellingham? So if it's not the right location, we need to find one and find it quick. And I think I would like to see the staff go to work on this, throw it out to the other 2 commissioners to decide if that's the right location or not. But I'm 100% behind it. I think you're going in the right direction. I really like the fact that you don't just come with an idea. You've got some money, you've got people behind it, you've thought it through, you've got a building. So I'm 100% behind it. And I just don't want to make it so the next Archie Talbot that comes to town doesn't have a place to put his industrial area because we put a building there in its place. But I think we can work through that, either there or definitely somewhere else. And that's my 2 bits worth. Mike, anything?
I'm writing. Can you?
Jim?
Oh, you're right.
Yeah.
Definitely agree with our fellow commissioner here, and I think that anything to do with boating I've been in favor of for many years, having been in the charter business and so forth. But sailing I've never been a part of, and I always really and truly for many years thought, why would somebody want to go that slow? I want to get there and catch a fish. But as I got older, I started to appreciate it more and got to know more people that had sailboats. It was really becoming more exciting. It's kind of like soccer and me. I don't know anything about soccer, but I have a grandson that does. So all of a sudden, Rob, right, you get interested when the kids have soccer. Anyway, I think it's an excellent idea. I think the place is something that has to be looked at carefully. The location, that's for sure. So, yeah, I'm.
Commissioner Jorgensen, you can fish and sail at the same speed.
We've got to be a fast Dorado or
The
something.
fish are fast. This was a really interesting concept when I first heard about it. The first question I had was a location issue regarding wind. So I was hoping that someone that's here today could answer this question, because I've heard conflicting information about the winds and that sort of problem around Bellingham Bay in this particular location. Is there someone that wants to try to answer that for us today?
Well, Mike, or Commissioner McCauley, if you're a sailor on Wednesday mornings when you woke up, you hope that same wind would be blowing that evening. So the Sailing Foundation likes wind. Are you concerned about how rough the water might be there at times and no breakwater?
That's the question I've got. Obviously, and Ms. Zervis, thank you for bringing this up. I would like us to see, I would like us to try to find more outdoor recreation opportunities down behind the plywood plant. We have about 4 acres of land right there with used to be in a marina. I think you mentioned, building, Mike, you mentioned building minesweepers, which were built right there when the marina had been taken out. That would be a great location, but I've been told that the wind over there is not great for beginning sailors.
It's you're really exposed to the bay straight away, and you're restricted to that little inner bay there for the beginning sailors.
Gotcha.
We looked at that hard, and I can't remember what position we put that in. One of the big problems with that is the cost issue, because the utilities aren't there, and we'd have to meet the bulkheads, and there's a lot of things that we can't afford to do that would be a burden on someone else to do or try to get them to do. Safety is the biggest, in my mind, one of the biggest issues. We have wind with no sea, and at the Cornwall location, and if we do have some problem, they end up on the beach. So they're not going to be on the breakwater or something like that. We're totally eliminated over there from any boat traffic. So you're outside the boat traffic, which is a problem that we have right now because we're sailing in front of the outbound side of the main breakwater with 8-year-old kids and small dinghies, and it bothers us greatly. We'd like to get in a more sheltered area that's more protected. Convenience is another one, and that we're trying to get these children from the school systems and whatnot to be able to have quick and easy access to the site. And we also thought it's very important, and it helps us in our marketing as well. The city's planning on putting a bus turnaround down there eventually, and for the new park and whatnot, so we would enjoy that benefit as well. We just kept going through it, and we've been through this thing so many times, and we really haven't, we have other choices. One of the other things that we thought we could do is potentially use the inner portion of that dock that was the old chemical dock, the pump dock, and if we could use that, we could get the keel boats, the small keel boats and the etchels and things over there, so we wouldn't interfere with the commercial fishing activity that's going on currently, which is a real problem. I think it's that the sailors are over there trying to get their boats in the water at the same time the crabbers are putting the crab pots and nets on their boats and things. So we could solve that problem as well long term. So those are the things that we're the pile of things that we really reviewed, and but we're totally open, other than we're on the short time frame now because we have to get permits to get this building moved. The other thing is, I think that the city's very they really like this building and they want to accelerate the permits, and I think it needs a spot that has a good viewpoint from the public, and that's with the Zervis building. So all those things wound into what we thought was a favorable spot. I'm not personally trying to build another park. That's not my focus. My focus really is to bring an educational sailing center where we can do instruction, and it could lead ourselves to and minimize the amount of space that we do use, which is something I'm hoping that the port wouldn't need. And that's because that bay is quite shallow and it's not going to get dredged, and in the near future anyway. And so I think we have as good a spot as we can get. So.
The document that I gave Mike here was our extensive research on 6 different sites, and the site that you're referring to, we love. It's beautiful, but it's cost prohibitive, and there aren't utilities. There's not a road. The transportation network's not there. A variety of issues that we couldn't afford in the next 10 to 20 years. But we've spent a lot of time analyzing each of these 6 spots. Like I said, we had 20 criteria for each one, and that particular one was number 5 on the list. We would.
Jim, can you go through 1 through 6?
You bet. Number 1, the Cornwall site had. All 23 points possible, 100% of the possible points on the corner of Pine and Cornwall. And that section, according to the documents that we've seen so far, would be just on the perimeter of industrial use. So if we selected that site, we'd have to move the security fence back slightly. And we acknowledged the issue of industrial use being next to the center potentially in 5, 10, 15 years. So our agreement would be that we wouldn't object naturally to anything next door, but that we would welcome it because that's all part of the balance of the community needs. So that's number 1 by far, 23 points. Number 2, was the site, the Zwanich fenced area that we're talking about. And that came in with 17 points. Again, it's a beautiful site with a surrounding view of the bay. You could watch out.
Where's the site?
Okay, you know where some people
okay.
call it the boneyard.
boneyard for the-
Some
for the
people call it
fishing.
the storage area, but it's the fenced-in area
Okay.
near Gate 5. Okay, so that is also near our BYC laser dock, which you can see from Hotel Bellwether. And when Craig was talking about the ramp, that's fairly close to that area. And it's, again, a visible spot, but it had a number of cons, and it came up with the total points of 17.
Where were the major cons, other than you're taking away the fisherman's boneyard?
Yeah, well, you guessed it. That's number one. The number one con was the concern among fishermen that we might lose the working waterfront coalition support. Right now we have 72 businesses that are fully behind this project, and Todd is the president of that group. Jay Bornstein and others are involved, and so they're supporting the site number one, not number two. Sorry? Yeah, I'm going to go down now. The safety issues and hazardous area for small sailboats, because it's right by the commercial area, there's not a beach ramp available. There's no public transit, WTA or anything that goes out in that area. The existing lifts by that spot are crowded and inadequate. We'd have to figure out how to get the dock and lift area. So anyway, I think you have this document, and there are a number of others that are listed there under cons. Number 3 is the
Commissioners, when he said you have this document, it was forwarded probably about a month and a half ago. You don't have it in front of you today, but I will redistribute that document right after today's meeting.
I've got my copy of it, so donate.
Number 3 was one of the last ones we looked at, and that's the Squalicum boat launch area. And again, that's a visible area, and it's near the BYC facilities. It's adjacent to the boat ramp, but it had a number of cons, including the fact that it'd be hard to build our main building there. We could locate the little food co-op building, but having a beach access and having the opportunity to have family viewing from an international sailing center, you couldn't, because it'd be looking over the marina rather than the bay. Number 4 was the Fairhaven site, and it's behind the community boating center, and that would be a plus because we would like to have a stronger connection with the Community Boating Center, and think they're off to a great start in terms of helping us work together and things like, being able to have kayak availability and just a variety of things. But that's across from the railroad center. It doesn't have lifts. It may interfere with other operations in that area. But mainly being removed from our existing BYC and sailing facilities and so on. It's at the other end of the bay. And then I mentioned the Plywood Center. There's one more. And that's the Harcourt site, adjacent to the development going on here in the very near future. We looked at that as well. Again, that'd probably be one of the most visible because of all the developments that's going in that area. But again, there's no beach access, there's no ramps, no lifts. A dock would have to be built. It's shallow, there's currents in there that are really difficult on more traffic. So that came in the lowest of all at total points of 8. So we went all the way from 23 to 8 in that order.
Okay. Mike, any other comments? Thank you very much, Jim.
Yes, thanks for filling me in, especially because I did not have any youth sailing as a child, so I'm not quite familiar with the challenges of being a young person on the water in regards to wind. So there's a few other things that are interesting to me in this particular project. Mr. Alsop, you brought up the pier. It wasn't mentioned earlier in the presentation, the chemical pier there, and so I think there's some work that we have to sort of figure out in regards to using that or not using that, how that's all going to function. And then also Pine Street, if the access to the pier would be on the Pine Street right away, and I don't know if we have, is Sylvia here now? I don't know that we actually, the port has control over that right away or not, because I know in other areas we do not.
We were trying to get that right away vacated, the Pine Street right away vacated to us, and then we would have control over it, but
We're
right
not
now.
there yet, right?
Yeah, that's correct.
Part of the land swap agreements with the city, they're just starting to be implemented now.
Okay, all right, so that would be in our, okay. Yeah, I hate it when there's land that we're managing, like the DNR trail problem at the ASB, where it's something simple, but we get hung up on.
In this case, the city does have control of the land right now, but we expect it'll be under our control in the very near future.
In that case, we have full control over that. What sort of width of right-of-way access would be needed to, obviously, if you're just walking down there, 10, 12 feet might be suitable, but if you're hauling would you be hauling small boats to the pier? Okay, so the pier would need some sort of a lift, and how much width would you need to maneuver those boats?
Well, we need trailer width, and we only need it long enough to get into the deep water, which is about 70 feet, we think. I think that pier is about 315 feet long or something like that. The pilings, Rob gave me the report on that, and I've had Frank Himhoff look at it, and the pilings are in quite good shape, but the top deck is in pretty poor shape, and so it would need some significant work on the top deck for about 70 feet that we would use. We would not interfere with any. There's a barge ramp next to that on the west side of that. We could share that. I mean, I think that there's some dolphins out there. I don't know if the port has any use for those dolphins or whatever, but they were to anchor those, temporary tie those barges that were in there. It wouldn't bother the club at all to use that barge ramp on that other side. I mean, we would totally be using the, if we had the availability of that dock, just the eastern side of that dock, and anything to the west toward the Horizon boat would be totally available to any kind of commercial use.
Mike, do I understand if you can't launch the Etchells and the keel boats off that dock, you still want that site as your number one site?
Yes. Yeah, I think so.
For the non-keel.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah.
And staying with that, well, I think Rob's going to pull up an overhead image of that for us, I'm guessing.
Nice picture right there, though.
There you go. Stick with that.
The boats out there.
So would you be looking at exclusive use of the right-of-way that was set aside for access to the pier?
That's correct. And it would be exclusive use, public use, but it wouldn't be specific to, it would be specific to sailing and whatnot.
Okay. Well, I guess to be specific about the question,
Storage
it would be open to the public to walk down.
That's correct.
And you wouldn't be opposing that?
No.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Now, one of the things that was brought up earlier, not if Ms. Zerbis brought it up or someone else, but the concepts of activating this down here, and this is, I think, really one of the first good ideas that's come out to do something to activate this into that street and get started. So I think that having that public access down there that's not infringing on the the industrial side is really great. And some of the other ideas that we've seen for public access there would tend to put some pretty severe constraints at times on the industrial side. But I think this case with the right-of-way, the access right-of-way to the pier would be pretty minimal. And I don't believe we had any long-term plans to use that particular pier anyway. So this is a great way to utilize a space that's not going to interfere with what's happening next door.
I think that's a great photograph. We need this. We would use this portion right here, and then everything on the east side, which is barge availability, whatnot, would stay intact. And we could share that first part. What we're really looking for is Pine Street, basically Pine Street across the face of this, and just move that fence over. And we would go down. The city, if you look in the city's plans, park plans, they're planning on extending or enhancing that beach somewhat in here, and I'm not sure how far. And we would like to put a ramp, take the riprap out and put a ramp in here for small boats, not for cars or trucks ramp, but just push cart ramps for small boats.
Where would your building go, Mike?
And the buildings would go right here in this area, which basically your maintenance people have minimal use of that right now. And we can store boats in this area as well, and because we won't need a lot of there will be no vehicle traffic out here. We might need a tug or something like that if we had the etchels and whatnot, the keel boats on that dock. And that's basically what we're looking at. We'd like to work with the city and get this turnaround, this access completed, so that it really looks nice, and we'd like to have some security there, so that, because I think at first it's going to be tough on the security side, because it seems to be generating a lot of bum traffic. Or
What's that?
Thanks for clearing up some other issues there. I actually have 4 points, it looks like now. You are mentioning how sort of the design is going to look, and the city's in the process of looking at the beach, what the new Cornwall Beach Park is going to look like. They also have a real problem with the R.G. Haley site, which I'm guessing right now is probably going to end up being capped and covered in asphalt, and there'll be a parking lot, right?
And that's a huge advantage to us, because when we have these big regattas, it's trailer parking and for small cars and basically smaller trailers, but we can get that load off your public dock, your public parking here, which is really getting tough to deal with. And if Redden builds their new building and we eliminate more parking, our event parking, which we're using now, is almost impossible when we have an event and we have a big fishing day or nice day out here for the public boat ramp.
Well, I think that this is a good time to be involved. I'm not sure that the time frames are going to work out with the city's processes, which may be a little unfortunate for you folks, because it may delay some of what you want. However, I do think that this is a great opportunity to help inform the city on, especially with the ports, if the commission supports it, with the commission support, to say, hey, this is sort of a good direction to go. A few things that are interesting to me in this is if there is a cap on R.G. Haley, how it can help this process. That obviously there's going to be some water depth issues out there, because there should probably be some dredging work in the water for their cleanup. It'll be for their cleanup, not for you folks. I would like to see, personally, I'd like to see a launch. I'm not sure if it's the same location that you presented, but possibility of adding some sort of a groin to protect the beach, but also to protect a launch as well. So you've got some easy access to the water, and then of course you mentioned the boat ramp. So I'm going to give all these thoughts to Rob to kind of help follow up on. But I think the one big problem here may be the city's work on the beach side of it. So the ramp portion may be a pretty significant delay.
I think the city's very anxious to get some foothold started down there, and they, I wasn't there, but I think Dominic was there, and they're willing to accelerate any permitting that we might need, especially because of the building.
Super.
And, is that correct?
Yeah. So those are all my comments, and I know, Mr. Robbins, you mentioned the industrial side. I would second that. I'm sure Jim is on board with this as well. We do not want to infringe on the industrial side there. I think a lot of hard work went into making sure that we had even more space for industrial activity there, so we don't want to start infringing on that. And so I think if we can make sure we satisfy that potential problem, then I don't see a big issue with this.
Mike, I just want to be real clear again. If you get the building only, you're all right with that.
We're all right with that.
Not the dock. The dock could be a plus down the road if we could, or use it temporarily or something, but it's really not for the Aeschylus at this point.
That's correct.
Okay.
Yeah, our main focus is the small boat, cart boats that we're sailing off the Zwanich Park right now.
Just a couple of quick points of clarification, if I can. The barge ramp the Commissioner was talking about earlier is this right here. This dock, the one immediately below it, is what we call the chem dock. We are slated to remove that in its entirety. However, we could certainly remove parts of it, cut it off something like that, or a third along the way. And I think that would give them enough depth to do what they want to do. And then the only other thing I wanted to clarify is that when it comes to the R.G. Haley site, which is down in this area right here, the port is managing that cleanup. Although the city owns the land, we are managing the Cornwall Avenue cleanup, and we're working closely with them on the R.G. Haley cleanup.
Okay, anything else, Mike?
No, thank you.
Anything else, Jim?
No, I think the cleanup, what he just mentioned, is something you need to really keep in.
Well, I don't want to speak for all three commissioners, but as far as I'm concerned, whatever we can do to speed this along and get the staff working on it, I'd like to see it go forward sooner rather than later.
Yeah, I don't disagree. I think our side of it's probably pretty straightforward. Making sure we have the lands, dealing with the maintenance department so that we're not infringing on what their needs are going to be for the immediate future. But I think the city's process is maybe the slowest part of all this.
I'd kind of like to have the staff come back. There might be something we're missing have the staff come back with a recommendation in case there's a site that might be better, or
That's what I'd like to see, is the staff to recommend or to talk to you about the pros and the cons from the port's perspective of all these sites, because they're a little bit different than the sailing center's pros and cons. So obviously, we have our own concerns about the sites, but we'll come back to you with these 6 sites and talk to you about them.
Okay.
And if anybody's got really good ideas for that property behind the plywood plant, let us know. One more goes down.
Well, thank you very much for your presentation. Obviously, you've done a lot of work. You've put a lot of thought into it, and you've got some resources behind it. I think it's great, and I hope we can make it happen. Okay, our next item is an action item. Lindsay, if you could.
Motion A by the Commission approving the renewal and modification of airport lease between the Port of Bellingham and Bellingham Aviation Services, LLC, for fixed-base operations at the Bellingham International Airport. And motion B by the Commission approving a new commercial lease between the Port of Bellingham and Bellingham Aviation Services, LLC, for 4121 Mitchell Way and hangar HE15 at the Bellingham International Airport.
Thank you, Lindsay. Good afternoon, Commissioners. Bellingham Aviation Services has been a tenant for about 12 years. We are pleased to bring forward these transactions today. Vanessa Oliver Nielsen, its president, unfortunately has a schedule conflict and had hoped to be here today. She does, however, anticipate having an open house in the fall, so that may be an opportunity to tour the premises for the Commission, Executive Director, and others as applicable. The renewal and modification of lease for the fixed base operations is a term of 10 years. Consistent with the underlying lease, there are 2 5-year renewal options. Effective August 1, rent increases by about 4%. January 1, 2016, it increases by about 2%, increases 2%, and then there is a 2% annual escalator each year thereafter. There's a 2-month no-rent period, provided that Bellingham Aviation Services cleans the exterior of the self-service tank on or before December 31st of this year, and insurance is updated to meet the 2015 minimum liability insurance standards. Regarding the new commercial lease for space at 4121 Mitchell Way, Bellingham Aviation Services is very much looking forward to occupying these premises, which will be used for maintenance and repair of ground support equipment and services for the Signature Airlines, as well as some office use. The term of this lease runs concurrently with their fixed base operations lease, including the 2 5-year renewal options. To prepare the premises for occupancy, there is a 3-month no-rent period. Beginning December 1, monthly rent is $650 and escalates 2% annually. Nominal rent for both transactions is $532,834. Staff recommends approval of both of these transactions and is available to answer any questions that you may have.
What kind of tenant improvements are they doing in lieu of the free rent? Is that the reason for the free rent?
The building was built in the 80s, and it is an older building. They do anticipate, they haven't submitted anything as required by the lease, but they do anticipate doing a lot of curb appeal to the front entrance of that.
Thank you, Judy. Mike, anything?
Minimum insurance standards. So that seems to be a little bit different conversation than, say, a boat in the harbor or a particular tenant that doesn't have really explosive products in a tank. So is there a different minimum insurance standard for that?
Very good question, Commissioner. We are updating to the $2 million general liability, including the accidental spill coverage. Currently, the lease is at $1 million and is so needing to be updated to the $2 million.
Okay, thank you.
Commissioner Jorgensen, nothing? Okay.
I'm fine.
Okay, hearing no other comments, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Passes 3-0.
Thank you.
Thank you, Judy. Our next action item is under the Environmental Department. If you could please read it, Lindsay.
A motion authorizing the executive director to execute amendment number 21 to the professional services agreement with Aspect Consulting, LLC, to increase the scope and budget by $107,838 for a total authorized budget of $3,259,855.
Thank you, Lindsay. Good afternoon, Commissioners. As the Commissioners are aware, there's a significant amount of work going on in the Waterfront District these days with the groundbreaking at the Whatcom Waterway, the work that the city's doing on the Chestnut Avenue Bridge, and with the planned demolition of the chipper and digester building, as well as the Harcourt project of the granary building. There's a lot happening down there. And this is another part that we can't forget about, is the cleanup action work at the GP West site. I gave that as an example because there's a significant amount of PSA amendments and contract amendments going to be coming your way over the next few commission meetings, and typically I would like to condense those into a single commission or a commission action to be a little bit more efficient. But there's a number of parallel track projects that are going on that require different amendments at different times. So this is the first of a few PSA amendments. This one actually pertains to the chlor-alkali portion of the GP West site, which is on the southern portion of the site, similar to where we had our earlier discussion with the International Sailing Center. That is where we conducted a interim action to remove approximately 3,000 tons of mercury-impacted soil from the former chlor-alkali plant as an interim action in 2014. Because of that work, prior to that, we'd done a significant amount of feasibility study work with Aspect Consulting, where we defined a range of alternatives that might work for the final cleanup approach of that area. But we don't have any data subsequent to that interim action, and the Department of Ecology is asking whether or not there might have been a significant amount of changes to the groundwater conditions or other changes due to the amount of work that we did in 2014. So they've asked for some new groundwater monitoring, some pore water sampling, that will help us inform the set of remedial alternatives that we can look at for the final cleanup action in that portion of the site. This is an AIG and grant-funded action, and with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Those requests weren't made in the original contract?
No, this was all subsequent to the interim action work that we did. We've hired Aspect back in, I think it was 2008, with the anticipation that this would be a number of different PSA amendments that we could adaptively manage this project. A lot of work has gone into this already, and a significant data set already exists, but there's been enough work done that it might have changed the groundwater conditions enough that we might select a different alternative or have a whole different technology that would work out there, and Department of Ecology wanted to kind of confirm that.
Okay.
Could you speak a little more to the mercury?
Yeah, sure. This is the portion of the site on the southern portion of the mill site where Georgia Pacific had their chlor-alkali facility, where they used mercury in their processing to create chlorine gas and caustic that they would use both in their bleaching process in the paper mill as well as sell to the market. The mercury was actually just a part of the process, and the wastewater that was discharged from that plant contained elemental mercury in some cases. So we did in 2013 and 14, we did a large excavation with a very complex stabilization of soil, where we took sulfur and mixed it with cement and stabilized this soil that could be then shipped to a hazardous waste landfill in Oregon. There's still more work to be done on that, and that's what this next phase of work will inform. There'll be more cleanup to be done on that portion of the site still.
Thanks.
So, Brian, I've been here 5 years. You've heard me say this before. I'm all about saving money, finding good technologies to, do what we need to do. Seems though that this is similar to another project that happened here at the Port of Bellingham, where things changed. Department of Ecology said, "Oh, let's go back and study it again," and 3 years later, we're still not started on the project. So, how is this latest request from Ecology going to do anything that's going to be better, other than just inform us of the exact same problem we already knew about?
No, that's a great question, and that's a problem that we have had in the past, and there, with the Department of Ecology, had gone down the path of always asking for a little bit more information, and that costs money, delays projects. In this particular case, actually, it's a little different, and the project manager we have on this site is all about getting stuff done, actually. He's a very on-the-ground, focused on getting cleanup done and not doing a science project. But because this is so unique, it's actually, I didn't want to go, I'm happy to go into a lot of detail on this, but there's, it's probably one of the most complicated cleanup sites in Washington State, and for a number of reasons. We've got groundwater conditions that are really high pH, like pH 12. That dissolves mercury and mobilizes it. We have elemental mercury, which is very dense, very hard to manage. It would be a hazardous waste if it's removed from the ground, and it's very expensive. We have groundwater paths that go multiple ways. It goes to the log pond. It goes to right across the proposed sailing center footprint. We have integrated projects that are looking at using this as a industrial area, as well as some recreational areas. So there's a lot of different factors that go into that. So really nailing down the data, especially since we've done a big removal action, will have a major impact on how you select and what cleanup actions you would select in this area. So I generally kind of push back on more data for data's sake, but in this case, I do think it is warranted.
So maybe 2 years ago, Mr. Stoner was standing there and asked this question: if we had an industrial tenant that needed to move in right away, how long would it take to get that site ready? And he said 8 months. I'm not certain that at this point we could possibly get anywhere near that.
Well, I think that's, and this is always a kind of chicken or egg thing, and we run into this on all of our sites where the Department of Ecology has been really good about responding when we have a very specific proposed action. Until you get that, it's difficult to push it along. And we've run into this at the C Street area where we have a different cleanup action and a tenant that wants to do some work, but it's not really defined, so who's making the first decision is sometimes a problem.
Okay, that makes sense. Okay, thank you for that.
So has most of the mercury been carted off at this point?
A significant amount of it.
Are we assuming it has?
Well, we know that there's more elemental mercury there still to be addressed. Part of that was it was under the footprint of the building itself, and the superstructure of that building, because it had to hold these vats full of mercury, is really massive. Pile caps and support beams, and so our approach for the interim action was outside of that footprint. It wasn't going to work for that footprint of that building. So we kind of took a timeout, and we're going to address that portion in the final cleanup action. But having to remove all that structure is going to take a lot of thought.
Okay, cool. Any questions? Any other questions, Commissioner? Okay, hearing none. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
Thank you, Commissioners.
Thank you, Brian. That passes 3-0. And our next item is still an environmental item number 3. If you could please read it, Lindsay.
A motion authorizing the executive director to execute amendment number 9 to the interagency agreement with the Department of Ecology for the Bellingham Bay demonstration pilot to adjust the scope, decrease the budget by $100,000, and extend the completion date to June 30, 2017.
Thank you, Lindsay. Good afternoon, Commissioners. Mike Hogan, Public Affairs Administrator, and I'm going to be speaking about this extension of the interagency agreement, but I also, this is under the Environmental Department, so Brian Gowan, Director of Environmental Programs, will be happy to answer any questions. We both sit on the Bellingham Bay Action Team under the Bellingham Bay Pilot and are involved in this project. Just a quick background, the Bellingham Bay Pilot, the port signed on as co-manager of this project back in 1996. It includes the Department of Ecology as the other co-manager, and all the other federal, local, state, and tribes that have stakeholders in Bellingham Bay projects. So the Lummi Nation, Nooksack Tribe, WDFW, among others. And we also have citizen participation with Resources that attends the Bellingham Bay Action Team meetings. And this project was about how to clean up, restore habitat, and do land use on a bay-wide objective. Just a little background. Department of Ecology was looking for a new way to address these urban bays where, we had 150 years of historic industrial activities that led to contamination, a lot of different owners and operators over time. Some of those were gone, fled to Canada, so it was tough to track down who was responsible, who would pay for it, overlapping contamination, high cleanup costs, challenge getting permits with ESA-listed salmon, and so it led to a lot of legal court battles and a lot of challenges getting the contaminants cleaned up. There was also big habitat problems. This is a picture of the Squalicum Creek estuary back in 1996. Loss of over 200 plus acres of eelgrass habitat in Bellingham Bay. We had ESA-listed Chinook, big time problems from the WDFW and other agencies as far as habitat concerns. And the port and city and other local stakeholders also were having increasing concerns about land use. The natural resource-based economy, a lot of those businesses were fading, going away. We had contaminated industrial property. We had minimal public access and big concern about waterfront brownfields. This is a picture of the Holly Street landfill, which was an old city dump down on the central waterfront. And so the Bellingham Bay pilot project was initiated back in 1996, and all the affected stakeholders, state, local, federal agencies came together and sat down and came up with a habitat restoration report in 1999, a comprehensive strategy for how to deal with these cleanup land use and habitat issues on an integrated basis. And it really set the stage for the port to have the knowledge, both the port and city to have the knowledge to acquire significant amounts of contaminated property, which included the Georgia Pacific site, the Chevron property, the Colony Wharf site. And it also helped us kind of develop a conduit into getting MOTCA grant funding to clean up these sites to make our case for Urban Bay. So we've been really successful in getting MOTCA cleanup grants, and then also both integrating habitat projects as part of our cleanup projects, and then also getting dedicated grant funding for habitat restoration projects. Jay Manning, the head of ecology back in 2007, made a commitment for $5 million for Bellingham Bay, and so we've currently received about $3.5 million for that. Some of that's gone to the port, some of it's gone to the city to support various habitat projects. And the habitat restoration project, I won't go over all these, but there was about 38 different opportunities. It listed them as high, medium, low priority, looking throughout the bay. And just a sense of some of the ones that have been complete or in progress are highlighted in green. So a lot of progress through this coordinated effort has been made. Going through the process, there's also been a lot of new opportunities that have been identified. You can see the big laundry list. And again, we could go through these in more detail, but it's better to show pictures. So this is the Holly Street landfill before as part of the cleanup for that site. This was a city-led project, went in and it did not only the cleanup, but put in, restored the shoreline for habitat purpose, put in public access. This is a picture of Marine Park, did a soft bank shoreline restoration. This was a port-led project. This is Boulevard Park. You can see the soft bank restoration. So a lot of really great projects, and there's some still on the horizon. This is the Mount Baker Plywood shoreline. We've completed the design and permitting for this project, and we're working with ecology to get grant funding. This is a conceptual rendering of what that project would look like. The Squalicum Creek project's been a priority for the port for a long time. We completed phase 1 back in 2013, and we're currently going through the design and permitting phase for phase 2. Again, this is all grant funded through the Department of Ecology, and the ports support it with staff time and working with different consultants through our hiring process to get this work done.
On that picture you just had, those aren't pilings in there to the left, are they?
Yes, there were actually. This is a better picture. This shows the.
So we left those. We took the dock out and left the pilings.
We removed, and this, it actually went through 2 phases. In 2007, we did the first removal of most of the dock and pilings, and then back in 2013, we went through and removed the rest of the pilings. So this is what it looks like today.
Oh, there was your next picture. Okay.
Yeah.
I thought that phase 1 was the final picture. No.
Yeah, no. That was the before. And then phase 2 is a pretty complicated project. It includes modifications to the Burlington Northern Railroad spur, removing the concrete line channel between the BNSF bridge and the Roeder Avenue bridge. There's a city sewer main that goes under that concrete footprint, and then actually modifying that Roeder Avenue bridge to remove that fish passage barrier. And so I spent a little bit more time talking about this because it's the next part of, so the discussion today is one on renewing or extending the Bellingham Bay pilot interagency agreement for 2 years. The second part is decreasing our funding by $100,000, which I typically don't like to do, but in this case, it really supports another priority pilot project. So we have about $500,000 left in our Squalicum Creek budget to complete the design and permitting. That's not enough to do construction, but it really, the idea is to get it construction ready, and there's a lot of grants that we look for that people don't want to support funding for design and whatnot, but if you get it to the design and permitted level, then it becomes that much more attractive for construction funding. The reason we want to remove about $100,000 from our budget is because there is another project led by the city. It's the Little Squalicum Park Estuary Project, where they've been successful in securing a grant from the Rose Foundation for $200,000. However, that requires a match, a 2-to-1 match. The funding we have in the Squalicum Creek project isn't enough to get us through construction, but if we transfer some of the money out of that project to support another pilot priority, which is this Little Squalicum Park Estuary Project, that allows us to collectively get another $200,000 in outside funding for this project and get that a lot closer to construction.
Mike, why is the port involved in the Little Squalicum Park?
So it's under the umbrella of the pilot projects so the Department of Ecology's supported habitat restoration projects through the Bellingham Bay demonstration pilot and funneled some of that money to the port, some of the money to the city. So, for example, in the Squalicum Creek area, we have an interest in the estuary and meeting some of those habitat restoration objectives in the second phase of that work. It's really city infrastructure, so the idea is to kind of get that to a permit level ready habitat restoration design, then transition it to the city. So on the horizon, they have replacing that sewer main, so we're hoping to be able to complete some of that work down the road, and eventually we'll transition that, and it kind of meets Baywide habitat restoration objectives. For the Little Squalicum Park Estuary Project, it kind of comes under the umbrella of priority Baywide habitat restoration projects. This made more sense for the city to be the lead on this project. They've been working on it. Both these projects are priorities for the Bellingham Bay pilot, but at this point it makes sense to transfer some of the money from the Squalicum Creek project so that we can use it as leverage to obtain outside funding to support the construction of this project.
So even though this isn't directly affecting any port properties, this is just part of the Bellingham Bay pilot, which we're lead on, therefore we're sharing resources.
Exactly. It's that kind of collective ESA salmon recovery goals that we have both as a port and collectively with other agencies.
Mike, where is Spring Creek?
Spring Creek, Brian, do you know exactly where Spring Creek runs in? He's a neighbor over here, so.
I think Spring Creek is where it comes in right by the railroad that comes in at the base of the bluff. What's the name of that road that's just turns up to Seaview?
Seaview.
Yeah, that's Seaview.
Oh,
that accesses it. Schultz. Yeah. Schultz. So Spring Creek is there. There's always that kind of that spring fed area. So that's what I refer to as Spring Creek.
Just below the spring.
Just below the spring.
Well, that's where the creek used to run anyway, right? It used to run back along the bluff, and then it was redirected.
So anyway, that concludes my presentation. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
I don't have any questions. I don't like giving back $100,000 that we've been given, but that we've earmarked, but I certainly understand why and support it.
They won't reimburse that again?
Well, yeah.
They will in a roundabout
We'll get it
way.
somewhere else, right?
I think
Get some goodwill out of this.
No, I'm sure.
Yeah, it makes
I think by having our agencies work closely together, and it's kind of Baywide objectives, we have been successful in getting a lot of state money for both cleanup projects and habitat projects, and this certainly will go to keep that process going. We're hopeful.
A couple of quick questions. Well, I know this is a question. So I think I brought this up a few months ago. City Councilman Jack Weiss asked about the trail system they're building in the off-leash area. I don't know if this is any sort of additional off-leash area that we can help them with. And then can you go to the image that shows the railroad bridge? I think that one. Under the number 1 there, is that is actual BNSF property, that spur that goes through there? Do we know that?
Yes and yes.
I don't believe it is. I think it's a right of way that BNSF has over our property, but we can certainly look into that. But
They own the bridge.
They own the bridge and the lands. We just gave them the right of way. I'm guessing that's how that works, right? Okay. Yeah, I'm learning more and more about these railroad, where they have the rights of way and where they don't. So thank you for filling me in on that one. The replacement of the bridge then would be on their dime? Are they cooperating with that?
We've, when I sat next to Mr. Fulton, I listened to him call BNSF, I think, for a month straight, and to his credit, he was the only one that was able to actually get through to the executives in Texas on BNSF, and at the end of the day, it was a major win. They agreed to let us modify their bridge on our dime.
Wow. That was an amazing outcome. Good job, Adam.
How kind are we?
So yeah, you would think they would have interest and goodwill and funding but they have issues, nationwide that they're dealing with.
Given the speed with which they've replaced a bridge over Seaview, on the main line, I might add, would they be doing the work here then? We just basically pay them for it.
They have, I believe, and Adam's been our lead engineer in this project, but they have strict guidelines that we would follow on, what needs to happen to meet whatever their requirements are.
So we might be using a local contractor rather than BNSF specific. Okay.
Yeah, we actually have done some design work already to this bridge. We're nearing the 60% level, and yes, there's a local guy, David Scherer, that we've been using to.
And then in the phase 2, there's a fish blockage issue with some concrete. I don't know if it's a small dam or something. Has that already been done, or is that still to come?
So the fish blockage issue actually starts at that BNSF rail spur, and it's at at most tidal cycles. There's anytime fish come to that flat concrete, and it's a jump and velocity barrier that they have. So, and that Squalicum Creek actually supports the largest amount of salmon anywhere within city limits. So there's a lot of fish trying to move up that system, and this project would actually, the city is working on a major effort up towards Bug Lake to remove fish passage barrier up to 20 plus miles of spawning habitat. So there's a lot of work on this system, and this will fit really well in with bay-wide salmon restoration objectives.
Commissioners, you may already be aware of this, but that spur that crosses this bridge here ends at Mount Baker Plywood. It used to go all the way up to Orchard and to several other locations, but it's been abandoned with the exception of going to Mount Baker Plywood. So I think it frequently visits Bellingham Cold Storage before this bridge, but very infrequently does it go to Mount Baker Plywood. Probably part of the reason BNSF wasn't too interested in talking, they probably don't even care if they have the spur.
What about, this is a little off the subject, but Rob, you started this. So do we need this rail spur anymore? Does Mount Baker Plywood need this?
They use it very infrequently, yeah.
So that was a question that we looked through as part of this project. Maybe it would be easier, we could buy them a forklift. They could just bring their materials to one side of the bridge. And it turns out, I think they use it maybe once a week or something.
Oh, okay.
And so we talked to Mount Baker Plywood, and they had no interest in giving it up.
Sometimes it just doesn't make sense. There's a rail spur that goes into the back of a building in Ferndale. You can find this on Google Maps. I don't know why it's still there, right?
Yeah.
So in those cases, it probably doesn't make sense. But I think here once a week, that's reasonable.
And actually,
That's significant.
the main cost. So everything needs to happen between number 1 through 4 to make this work. Everything from the sewer line to the removing the concrete bottom to the BNSF and the rotor bridge. And by far the biggest cost is going to be the rotor bridge modification or replacement. Okay. And but there's other advantages as we look at it, not just from a habitat restoration problem. There's by doing these modifications, they can increase the stormwater capacity of this system. The city's going to be doing a sewer main replacement, and so we try to align multiple objectives when we're looking at
So does the city's portion where we're transferring the 100,000 to, you mentioned stormwater, does that, making more stormwater run through here doesn't help the fish? It tends to scour, et cetera, all those other problems. So is there more stormwater capacity built in upstream to slow down?
So what happens is at certain times this whole system floods.
Yeah.
So since we're looking at multiple funding sources to actually build the project, by increasing the stormwater capacity of this project, it allows the city to access stormwater funding to support construction. So that's one key benefit. The other is by replacing the Roeder Avenue Bridge, there's some curvature issues with trucks coming along that bridge, and then it also, they're looking at a design to put pedestrian and bicycle lanes in on one side of the bridge. So we look at ways to meet, everything from stormwater to recreation, and number one, that makes it a better project, but then number two, it allows us to access those fundings for these projects, which are typically expensive and hard to implement without meeting multiple objectives. So.
Thanks for saying that too. I heard it said earlier. Jim said this when he was speaking. The balance of community needs, obviously a whole lot of them there. So, thanks.
Okay, thank you, Mike. Thank you, Mike. And Commissioner Jorgens, anything? Hearing none others, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Passes 3-0.
Jim, I'd like to be more excited. That's for fish, buddy. That's for fish.
By the way, Mike Hogan, nice job on the side of the granary building. That looks good. Super job.
I heard that's hand painted.
We'd like Chinook salmon back and nothing else.
Our next item is in facilities. Lindsay, if you could please read it.
Authorize the executive director to execute Amendment 1 to the professional services agreement with Wilson Engineering, LLC, to complete the design and professional engineering services on the Squalicum Way Wharf demolition and bulkhead replacement in the amount of $28,200 for a total authorized contract amount of $63,200.
Thank you, Lindsay. Good afternoon, Commissioners. In front of you today is a PSA amendment for Wilson Engineering. Essentially, their original contract got the design up to a 30% level, which allowed us to apply for our permits and also determine the type of bulkhead wall that was to be implemented. It turns out we're going to be doing a tieback sheet pile wall. So the amendment here today will advance that design from 30% to 100% through bidding services in preparation of coming again to commission for award of the construction contract. There's really not a whole lot to it, so.
You're always so fast. So sheet pile wall suggests that there might be some deep water next to it. So what's the plan right now for what's in the water? Just a gradual slope, some riprap, something like that?
Well, the sheet pile wall actually mirrors a sheet pile wall that was put in 2004 to the south of this area. Essentially, we've got a little bit of a vertical area there and then a sloped shoreline down to the marina floor.
Will there be able to tie boats up there at all, anything like that?
Well, this project removes the wharf section that's in that area. So there's currently a graded float that the boatyard uses. We'll be putting in fender piling or guide piling to retain that alignment. So that
Which
use
boatyard
gets
uses it? I'm sorry.
Seaview.
Seaview.
So it'll retain that use there and also protect that open area.
Can you get any small boats on the other side between the new pile and that float?
Unfortunately, there's a building on one end and a wharf on the other end.
Yeah, okay, sorry.
It's kind of landlocked.
Okay.
Seaview, actually, if I'm not mistaken, Seaview requested that we remove this and do this work. So they're in cooperation with it 100%.
And once this design's completed, when do we plan to start construction?
Well, we're working through the permitting process now, but I'm hoping to go out to bid and get construction away before the end of the year.
In 2015?
Correct. And it will continue into early 2016.
Okay. Thank you. Any other questions, Commissioner? No, sir. And all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you,
Passes
Commissioners.
3-0. Thank you very much, Norm. Okay, our next two items are administration. Lindsay, if you could please read item number 5, action item.
A motion to request that the commission authorize the executive director to execute the 2015 through 2018 collective bargaining agreement between the Port of Bellingham and the International Longshore and Warehouse Union, ILWU, Local 7 Clerical, including any necessary budget adjustments. The terms and conditions of the agreement shall be effective as of January 1, 2015, and shall terminate on December 31, 2018.
Thank you, Lindsay. Good afternoon, Commissioners. Elizabeth Monahan, Director of Human Resources. So today I have the first of 2 collective bargaining agreements that we've just finalized with our unions. The contract expired December 31 of 2014. We began negotiating November of 2014, and the team for the port was myself as the lead negotiator, Tamara Sobczak, Dan Stahl, and Lindsay Burmeister for the union. It started out with a couple folks from the IBU who shortly thereafter were voted out of their positions, and so we had a little change in who was at the table. Alan Cote is the national president for the International Boatman Union, and he was the lead negotiator for this group, and with him was a newly elected regional director named Peter Hart. Our employees that were at the bargaining table were Tony Flaherty, who's a Marine Services representative, Bryson Tripp, also a Marine Service representative, and Susan Baker, who is a afternoon receptionist and lease assistant in real estate. So those are the teams. We spent a lot of time at the table. The key issues for us were making sure that we were competitive and maintained our health care provisions that are currently in the contract. The main issue for the union was wages, and throughout the discussions we discovered that our wages were significantly below market. The union did provide us other port information. We had our own data that looked not only at other ports, but local data, private, government, nonprofit data. So the contract in front of you is a 4-year agreement. It has a couple pieces in the first year as far as wages. We have a one-time cent per hour adjustment that is retroactive to January 1 of this year, and then most of those positions will receive 40 cents per hour. That's about 2% on the average wage, which is $19 an hour. Then on July 1 of this year, we will have a 6% across-the-board increase for all positions. And we believe that that raises the base rate to be very competitive with the market data that we have. Then in the next years, 2016, 2017, it's a 2.5% wage increase on January 1 of each of those years, and in 2018, a 3% wage increase.
Oh, what, I'm sorry?
3% in 2018. So if you have any questions on the parameters, I'd be happy to answer them.
So, Elizabeth, these look like a pretty big jump, 6%. I think anybody would look at that and say, whoa, that's a pretty big jump. Can you go into a little more detail on how we got to the understanding that the port's wages, which I know that you've worked hard in the past in being sort of middle of the road, so not too fancy, but not too shabby. So can you describe a little bit about how we ended up with this particular situation?
So in the past, the port's philosophy on compensation has been that we pay at or slightly below market. And then we compensate with our benefit package as being at or quite a bit above market. And so we figure that's a good balance between wages and benefits. And the union came forward with some data with other ports, including Anacortes and Everett and Olympia, and their wages for particularly the Marine Service rep position were substantially higher than ours. We don't compare ourselves only with other ports. We look at more robust data. And at the same time we were getting information, I purchased a salary survey that anyone can purchase. That's the Puget Sound Salary Survey. And we compared our wages with that and did find out that we were substantially below market. Not as far as the union presented below other port positions, but below what we typically benchmark against. So the wage adjustment, the cents per hour, got us up close. And then the 6%, we decided to do that on July 1 so that it annualized to a 3% increase, but it increased the base wage enough that we were comfortable that that represented where we needed to be with the market.
Okay. Well, I also appreciate that the annual raises at 2.5% to 3%. I think that's pretty consistent with historic inflation rates. So I'm glad to see that that's pretty close to that. So thank you for that.
Do you feel we're still above average on the medical and the?
I do. I think we have, particularly Commissioner Robbins, when we hire new employees and we sit down and go through what the benefit package is, they are very pleased with our benefit package.
With competitive ports of our size, or ports that are same numbers or close to, where do we stand there? Are we average? Is that? I think that's what Dan said.
As far as benefits or pay?
No, pay. I'm sorry.
We're a little bit on the low end when you compare to ports our size. But we have what's called the Whatcom County.
Oh, don't say that.
I don't know if people say that that's a benefit or not, but Whatcom County's wages are typically lower than King County and anything south. Because we tend to see people who choose the quality of life here and are willing to work for less. So on the employer side, that's a big plus. The employees don't necessarily see it that way.
Thank you. That's
well, you know, I know you said it like that. I think people can take it wrong. To be fair to your process, I think that when you're looking not just at other ports, but you're looking at how people are paid locally, being competitive locally is also just as important. So we don't end up, outsized for the local market, but we're not also below the market. So we're,
right, and the local
so being
positions,
competitive locally, I think, is important as well, but not because we can take advantage of it either. So.
We look at city positions, we look at Whatcom County positions, we look at Western Washington University positions, where we can have a good benchmark. That's what we look at for local government positions.
Isn't that one of the major hurdles, was what other ports were getting locally versus what's happening here?
Yes. That's correct.
Okay, thank you very much. Hearing no other questions, all those in favor?
Aye.
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 Thank you, Commissioners.
And you also have the next item.
I have the next one.
If you could please read it, Lindsay.
A motion to request that the Commission authorize the Executive Director to execute the 2015 through 2019 collective bargaining agreement between the Port of Bellingham and the Inland Boatmen's Union, IBU, including any necessary budget adjustments. The terms and conditions of the agreement shall be effective as of January 1, 2015, and shall terminate on December 31, 2019.
So again, this union is represented by the IBU, and the representatives at the table for the union were the same as, and the union piece was the same with the ILW clerical. So we did have that switch in elections kind of in the beginning. So we had Ellen Cote and Peter Hart from the IBU. And then for our team, we had Dan Stahl, myself, Lindsay, and Dave Warder, who's the manager at the cruise terminal. For our employees on the union side, this is a bargaining unit of 2 full-time and 1 part-time employees. So at the table, to begin with, we had both Eric Tritz and Joe Spencer at the table. Joe faded out a little bit, and so it was primarily Eric at the table. So it is rather interesting when you're bargaining with a union of 2.5 people, and 2 of them are at the table. But those are the cards that we play with. So the push on this contract was a little bit different than the clerical. There was not the overriding evidence or information that we were underpaid. The primary issue on wages with our union was that we had 2 wage levels. So again, think about it. We have 2 full-time, 1 part-time. We have a memorandum of understanding that was over 18 years old, where 1 employee was paid substantially more than the classified rate, basically the other employee. So you had 2 people doing essentially the very same job, being paid very differently. And it was a common interest on both parties to get those wages together. We had very different opinions on how we could get there, and we'd been trying to bridge that gap for a number of years. But this contract, which is a 5-year agreement, does get them in 2019 at the same wage rate. So we're very pleased that we were able to do that. And by what we did is we did not offer a % increase that is the same for each position. So Eric is getting substantially less money each year than the terminal agent, and then the part-time terminal agent is getting less than the regular terminal agent. So we do still have a disparity between our part-time employee and the full-time employees, but we think that's reasonable. So I'm happy to answer any questions you have on this contract as well.
Mike, any questions?
Just one, the final thing you said, the disparity between the part-time and the full-time, why is there one? Why is there a disparity in there?
Well, the prior contract, in order to get Eric and Joe closer together, we kind of robbed Peter to pay Paul, and we took some of that money from the part-time person and funneled it into the full-time position. And again, we did the same thing this time. And knowing that our part-time people, they do relatively the same work as our full-time people, but they're also there half the time. So we felt that that was reasonable to do.
This union only represents 2.5 people?
Yes.
So the IBU's comfortable with that?
They would prefer that they all had the same rate, but they understand where we're coming from.
Commissioner Jorgensen, any questions?
No, sir.
Hearing none. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you.
Passes 3-0. Thank you, Elizabeth.
Thanks, Elizabeth.
So that brings us to new business. Gentlemen, any new business?
I could defer. I got a couple of things. Jim?
Anything new business, Commissioner?
I'd like to see 3 new floats at Blaine, and possibly, no, nothing.
That's a perfect segue because
Eyes got kind of wide open.
No, it's all right. When I talked to Rob earlier this week, I asked him if we could look really hard at our budget for next year and as soon as possible making as many adjustments as we can to help speed up some of the work that's going on up in Blaine. And so that maybe it's 3 floats. Maybe it's
I'd like to
maybe it's
really
1 float.
seriously would like to see some more cleanup at Blaine at some of the areas there around the lockers and so forth. If that's a possibility.
That's already scheduled.
Yeah. So we're in the budget process now, as you know, and Tamara and I just met this morning on the Capitol. We have $28 million of new capital requests that were not in the budget last year. So I have to sit back down with staff. We're scheduled to do that a week from this Thursday. We're going to call through that list, take some of the stuff out there, try and get it to a manageable number that fits within our cash flow, and then we'll come back to you with the draft of the budget and the cash flow that shows you what projects we think can get in there.
Well, you got quite a job. Everything that staff wants and everything that we want, someone's going to get
They're $28 million. I think you guys are probably in the order of about $12 million, so probably about $36 million of projects.
We're easy.
I think we got about $1 million of funding available, so we should be.
There's a whole lot of no going around, definitely. And then one other thing that came up, could you, maybe this is a Rob thing, can you give us in the near future a sense of what's going on with MACA and MACA funding as it might reflect on our projects in the near future?
Yeah, we'll give you an update on, because we have not done that since the budget was passed. So we'll give you an update on MACA, not necessarily today. We'll prepare something.
Yeah,
and,
when you say budget, you mean state budget?
Yes, sorry. State budget was passed in late June, I think maybe June 30th even.
Okay.
And we'll give you an update of where we stand on MACA with that.
Super, thank you. That's it.
Okay, nothing. Hearing no other business, we are adjourned.